is God literally asking for a burnt offering? I really believe if you think that's the case, you might be missing the point of this occasion. God does not desire a burnt offering. God desires a heart that is yielded to Him. So therefore, it's not the case of, well, God's trying to take something valuable. God just says, I want to make sure that you love me more than this. So here's the story. Abraham, was an old man. He was a very old man when God gave him a son. If you can imagine this, about 100 years of age is finally when God says, now you're going to have a son, your own, Isaac, the son that I have promised, the son of promise. Now your firstborn son, if you say this, usually when we have a son, oh, that son's special. Oh, I'm so proud of my firstborn. And Isaac came along, and I believe Abraham was very proud and very thankful that God had answered prayer. And so the Bible does not tell us how old Isaac is at this time, but we do know this. We know Isaac was old enough to carry the wood. He was apparently grown, whether he was 10 or 12 or 20. The Bible's not clear about that. But we know Abraham is a man that is at least 100 plus years of age. We do not know his exact age. He's over 100. We know that Isaac is big enough to carry the wood. Carry the wood up the mountain. So we don't know exactly all of life. He's asking Abraham to give up that son, that promised son, the son that God had promised him. Now God is saying, give it back to me. Well, let me ask you a question this morning. If God were to ask you for your most prized possession, how many of us would be willing to give it to God? Now don't miss what I'm saying. I know there's some preachers who would take this and they would abuse it, and they would use it, and they'd say, and they would use it for personal gain. They'd say, well, just give it all to God. And there have been instances where men of God have asked people of God to give up possessions, and they've heaped it for themselves. And I believe that is the wrong spirit. And I believe that is not God's spirit. I believe that's the devil's spirit. That a man would ask you to give us your possessions to him and put God's name attached to it. But you've got to understand something. If God were to come and ask us, me, you, all of us, if God were to say, I want you to give up something that is valuable because it is maybe not even a stumbling block, maybe not even a sin or whatever. It's just something that God says, do you love that more than me? Do you love this more than you love me? God says, all right, let's test your loyalty. Let's test your love. That is the case in Abraham. Abraham says, I've got a choice to make. God is asking me to give up my son, my only son Isaac. He's asking me to give him up. And so the Bible says that in verse number 3, notice what he says. Not only was he attentive, but Abraham was very obedient. Verse number 3. And Abraham rose up. When did he rise up? Early in the morning. Now get the context here, all right? Get the context. Now I know for some of you, like, preacher, this can't be God's will to get up early in the morning. But Abraham said, I'm going to get up early. All right, so that's beside the point. Abraham is laying there. I cannot imagine. I cannot imagine what has happened over the last 24 hours in Abraham's life. And Abraham sits down at the supper table that night. And as Abraham sits down and eats, I'm not real sure. Now, again, I'm not sure about this. The Bible does not give us this detail. I don't know that Abraham told Sarah what was about to take place. I don't know this. But I bet that night as Abraham sat around the supper table, I bet Abraham was very, very quiet as he began to ponder what God had asked him to do. You're asking me to take my son. You're asking me to take my only son. And I believe Abraham got up from that dinner table and he went to his bedroom and he laid down that night and probably laid there wide awake. Probably not with questioning as far as doubting God, but in his mind going, I don't understand this. I don't know why, but God, I've got to make a decision. will I follow through with what God has asked me to do? You've got that same decision to make many times, don't we? When God asks us to do something, will we follow through with what God asks us to do? And he said, what will I do? And he said, the next morning he said, there's no question. If God said do it, even though I don't understand, I still must do it. If you trust God,
Very short distance. I really want to know God is asking.
I've just got to learn to trust God with who God is, because His ways are sometimes not my ways, and my ways are not His ways all the time. And